So first of all, I want to introduce you to what I'm using here. So this is what we call a fireboard. You can see this is the place where we actually start the fire. I've carved out a number of holes here because, you know, if this hole over here isn't working, then I can jump over and try one of these holes. And it just gives me a lot of flexibility here. There's a lot of different ways to make these. This is the kind of style that I like, with a hole running right through the center. It's important to have this sort of hole because you want there to be a place for that fire to generate and for it to go. It needs a little bit of airflow, and as you'll see, this is where you'll kind of like see that coal develop. So what you're going for in a fire is when you start moving the pieces together, they're going to generate this black material that we call punk. Now punk is like a black sawdust, and every little bit of it carries some heat. And all of that heat together, it's just like adding degrees onto this little pile. And after a while, it'll get hot enough where that will actually ignite into this warm, orange glowing thing. So that's our fireboard. That's the place where that fire is actually going to be started. This next piece is my spindle. So this will spin vertically, and that will be the location, or this is the part that actually moves while the fireboard stays stationary. So this is my spindle. I have over here two different top pieces to show you what they look like. I found this deer bone in the forest maybe 5 years ago, and I really like this piece. You can also use a rock. I have this river stone, and I like this very small piece because it's in a way unforgiving. So if I have, you know, my arm in the wrong direction, this is easy to pop out. So it teaches me really good skills. So I like this one a lot. And then the last piece I have is my nest right here. So this is just some fine bark, all kind of woven together. This is a juniper bark, and once we start the fire on here, we're going to transfer the coal into there. And then this is my bow. So this is a piece of juniper that I found and decided to carve it into my own kind of piece. I think it's a unique part of my set, and it's a little bit thicker than most people's bows, but for me, I like how it feels. So those are the pieces that we're going to be working with. The first thing I do is I make sure that my nest is ready to go, because if I put everything together and I can do all of this in the exact perfect way, but if I haven't prepared for a place for that fire to go, then there's no way that I'm going to turn that little coal into a flame. So that's a really important thing to have set up before you go. The next thing I'm going to do is get a good stance here. So my fireboard will actually go under my foot, and I like to have a nice wide stance. I can take my bow and my spindle and just do a little half turn here. And the ideal place for this to be on is kind of in this lower third. You don't want it touching this black part, but anywhere from down here to maybe around there is a good place for the spindle. You don't want it too high or you'll get really off balance here. There's so much force down here that you want to keep it close to the hole. So I'm set up here. I put this inside one of the holes that I have. I take my top rock, and what is really important is that this stays stable. It's really easy to try to keep it out here and muscle it, and a lot of people do that in the beginning. But what's really good is to get your leg out here and to brace off of that, and then you can just lean into it. I like to have just the weight of my upper body resting on this rock and braced against my leg, and that way I'm not pushing anything. I'm not, generating a lot of muscle here. You see some people work really, really hard to make fires, and you don't need to. It doesn't need to be an activity of strength. So the first thing that I do, I think there's about 3 stages to busting. The first one is just to make sure that things are moving well in your set. Because if at this stage there's something that feels really wrong, or if it's really hard for it to move, then something's not right and you need to readjust. So once I've felt that just like nice little motion, I might bring up the speed. And what I really want to focus on here with the speed is that I'm using all of my bow strokes. So it's easy to get these really short things, but actually the main friction comes from these nice long bow strokes. And while I'm focusing on my form, the board is just warming up. So I actually don't need to put a lot of muscle into this. I can just kind of wait here, make sure that I'm feeling pretty good. And then after my board warms up a little bit, then I can start to add a little bit of pressure, speed up a little bit, and that's where I start to get a little bit of smoke. So this is where it gets more challenging, where you're liable to get tired or to stop. And you don't need too much smoke. And you don't want to do it for too long either, because what you can end up doing is smothering what you have. And after you stop, it's also not a race. It's easy to get really excited when you see what's in your fireboard. But at this stage, this coal is just growing. So you can see that I have a bigger one right here, a little small one over there. And I like to just rock it here because I'm just adding a little bit of oxygen to it. It's the same as blowing it, but if I'm breathing a little bit hard, I could just blow this right out of my board and then I'd lose it. So I start to see some gray there. That shows me that that coal is fully formed and actually turning to ash on the top. That means I can move to the next stage. And I like to just take it over, give it a tap with my spindle, and then I have this coal in my nest. So I just want to give it these very, very gentle breaths. If you start to blow really quickly, you can break apart your coal, but I want to blow just to keep it orange. And that orange will start to walk and catch the other fibers. And this more smoke that comes out of it, the more that I know that I can blow a little harder. And there you have it, my friends. This is how you bust a fire. This is something that every time that I do it, it brings me back to that time that I spent in the wilderness. It's an important thing to me, and just feel grateful to be able to share it with you all. Thanks.